Get your interest in history?
I'll be damned if I know.
I mean, you made an effort to, you helped put the roof on the church, you put this program together, you helped turn the school into a community hall, you've taken oral histories of people that you've known in Butte.
Yeah.
Why? Why did you do that?
Because it interests me. I guess. I don't know.
Did you read a lot about history?
Sure.
I see that your mom, was it your mother that played the piano or the organ?
Yes, my mother played the piano.
And did she give you your interest in history? Did you talk about
No.
history with her? What about your dad?
Probably a little bit more with him because his thoughts were on mining all the time, the different mines.
Did you and he visit a lot about that stuff?
Yeah.
Talk? Here in the house?
Yeah,
So where would he sit and where would you sit?
out there in the kitchen.
In the kitchen? Did you ever have arguments?
No, never argued with him.
Why is that?
If you knew him, you wouldn't have to ask.
What about your friends that you had in school? Did they have an interest in history?
No. No, it's just something that I became interested in it, and I think, John, to tell you the truth, I think it came from my grandfather. See, he lived alone up in Marysville, all by himself, and I used to go up to visit him, talk to him, and he'd tell me different things. Coming up the Missouri River, and the steamboat had to stop for a day or a day and a half because the buffalo were going across the river. They couldn't go through the buffalo. And walking from Fort Benton to Helen to Butte and down to Argenta, back to Marysville, all those different things,
Yeah.
just
Did he ever talk to you about Ireland?
not very much, because he must have been pretty young when he left there.
Well, did you have any interest in Butte history?
No.
Why is that?
It's too common.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, everybody knows about Clark and Heinze and Daly, and everybody knows all that stuff, Now, I know a lot of what would be called history because of where I worked, different fellas that I worked for.
Who are some of those people that come to mind?
Well, Renoir, for one.
You work for Renoir?
He's the one that got me to go in the office. He said, I went up there and I was going to sign up to go underground. I'd come back from Marysville. I was going to go underground, and they said, Renoir wants to talk to you. So I went into his office, and he said, I think you should stay around and work in the office up here. I said, oh, I don't know anything about that. Oh, he said, you can learn. I said, all right. So I stayed there with him. And I went from one to another.
What was Renoir like?
High class.
Now, what do you mean by that? You like to flash money, or he's just
No,
a nice guy?
just a nice man. And a good man to work for. I mean, there was nothing big shot about him, on the job. He was just, you know, just a nice fellow.
Were you working for him when they decided to start the pit?
Yeah, but I wasn't working directly with him at that time. In fact, I was up at the Mountain View at that time. And the Mountain View, the Kelley was started. The Kelley Mine was started. But it was being operated through the Mountain View office. Kind of an odd setup, but that's the way it was. Until they got their own office down at the Kelley and started in big, you know. So I was there right on, you might say, the ground floor, Kelley.
What were you doing there at the Mountain View and later Kelley?
Office work, you know.
So what kinds of things?
Oh, making estimates and costs and estimates, and sometimes I'd get involved in setting up, where you have different men on, what do you call it? Where they work different. So many men work on Monday and so on Tuesday, and all those kind of things.
Scheduling?
Scheduling. Hey, cut it out.
Well, now, where was the wrestling card office? That was running out of the Hennessy building, wasn't it?
No.
Where was that being run?
Well, the first wrestling card office that when I got my card was on Granite Street, over along where there was a Safeway store in there later on. It was along in that area. There was the card office. And then I worked in the card office when they went down on Broadway Street, on East Broadway, way out on East Broadway, the card office. I worked in there.
What did you do for them there?
Mainly interviewing new men. We had a whole bunch, especially at that time, I had an influx of Mexican fellows. And we had to interview them to see if we thought they really were miners, you know. Most of them would pick up different phrases and words and things in joints, but they didn't know what they meant. But, you know, we knew. You know, when you interview them, you know,
Yeah.
somebody tried to tell me about something underground, I know what they're talking about.
Yeah. And then, when did you work in the purchasing office?
Huh?
When did you work in the purchasing office?
Never worked in it.
Oh, you never did?
Never did.
So you worked did you work in the wrestling card office in another location besides Broadway and Granite?
No,
Those two places?
no, I didn't work in the one up on Granite. That's where I got my
That's where you
wrestling
got yours,
card.
yeah, okay.
But I worked in the one down on East Broadway. But I also worked in the office, mind you. I started at the con. I went to the Anselmo. And I went to the Orphan Girl. And I went down to the tramway. And those are the main mines I think I was in. Then I was in the card office, you know, we call it card office, the mines office, they call it. Mines office. You know where that is. And then right across the street was the general office, and that's where I wound up, general office.
Well, what was similar in each one of the mine offices? Did they have a certain amount of office activity that was the same in each mine?
Yeah,
What was the same? in each
pretty
mine?
much the same.
What kinds of activities?
Mainly the work that we did was, they were always making estimates on costs. How much it would cost to do this, or how much that cost. Those different kind of estimates, and setting up, I know I got involved sometimes in some of the damnedest schedules, like engineers, say, for instance, and you got 3 different shifts, and you got different men, and you can't have them all on the same shift. You gotta have, this guy works 1 week on one shift, 1 week on another, and those schedules are a son of a gun. I worked on that, a lot of them. I got paid for everything I did.